Sellen, co-director of Californians for Pesticide Reform.
What do you think about this study and the investigation and the results?
You know, unfortunately, there are no surprises in this study. This is what we know it's very obvious. If you live in California, if you're a Californian, you know who's most impacted by the policies of the state when it comes to how food is grown in California. It has the greatest impact on our Latino residents, our farm working communities. They are not adequately protected. They work and live with the constant threat of harms to their health, threat of retaliation, fear. They are silenced, and so no surprises in this report, quite honestly. We just hope that it gets the attention of people that can make a difference, that could actually investigate these claims further and do something about it.
Perfect. What actions do you think should be taken?
We've always felt like there's such a clear civil rights violation occurring systemically across the board when it comes to how pesticides are regulated in California. So we want to pursue a civil rights claim. We want to ensure that the way pesticides are regulated in California no longer burdens one segment of the population more than any other.
Our first speaker is the co-director of the statewide Californians for Pesticide Reform, and she also happens to be my wonderful boss. What else can I say about her, right? Jane Sellen. She has been the leader in the CPR network for more than 200 organizations for 5 years now. 5 of the most intense years of pesticide reform history. Jane?
Thanks, Yaneli. Welcome, everyone. Jane Sellen, co-director of the statewide coalition Californians for Pesticide Reform. We've called this press conference to bring attention to the devastating findings of an advisory opinion on pesticide use and civil rights in California. Devastating, but not surprising. Our coalition has been organizing to address the pesticide threat in our state's agricultural regions for almost 3 decades. We push our decision makers to ensure that growing food doesn't mean poisoning our neighbors or threatening the health and safety of the workers who bring food to the table. Through our collective work, our coalition has won several important victories over the years, including withdrawals or bans of some of the very worst, most toxic chemicals, protections for kids from pesticide drift during the school day, and a commitment by the end of this year to provide the public with advanced notification of applications of the most hazardous pesticides. That's a truly precedent-setting win. Over the course of our 3 decades working on these issues, we have compiled a damning record of state policy that time and again puts industry profits ahead of the health of people, workers, children, and the environment. It's a record of weak, inconsistent, neglectful, and often openly hostile enforcement by county agricultural commissioners. We've seen our state regulator, the Department of Pesticide Regulation, or DPR, ignore the state's own expert scientists and allow a cancer-causing fumigant pesticide to be used at many times the safe level. When we challenged them, they fought us in court for years with Dow Chemical by their side, just for the right to keep on poisoning farm working communities. We've seen how county agricultural commissioners routinely rubber stamp permits for hazardous pesticide use right next to homes and schools, ignoring the law that requires them to consider local conditions, consider safer alternatives, consider the cumulative burden of exposure to multiple chemicals. And then when we try to challenge these permits, we see DPR just this month brazenly try to change the rules to make it much harder in future to challenge those permits. We and our members, and you're seeing many of them here, have been disrespected, ignored, threatened, lied to, lied about repeatedly. We've had cops on horseback called out to a peaceful protest in Sacramento. We've had an ag commissioner warn growers to call the cops on residents collecting air monitoring samples. We've received threatening phone calls warning us not to speak out. And we've painstakingly documented who is most hurt by our state's policies. We know that 97% of farm workers are Latino or Indigenous. 91% are immigrants. We know that Latino kids are twice as likely as their white peers to attend a school with the most agricultural pesticide use nearby. We also know that California's majority Latino counties have 900% more pesticide use per person and per square mile than the 25 California counties with the lowest Latino population. But we don't need these demographic analyses to tell us who is harmed by our state's policies. We're Californians. We live here. We know. And if a set of state policies that so obviously targets one group of Californians for disproportionate harm isn't a civil rights violation, we don't know what is.
Yes.
So back in 2021, we started working with Dr. Greg Macy of the University of California, Irvine. He's here with us today, and he'll be speaking shortly. Together, we secured generous funding from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to do the background legal research, to conduct expert interviews, to gather the data, to hear the stories. And then in September, last September, we convened in the San Joaquin Valley for a People's Tribunal, and we invited the public to present testimony in an open forum. About 100 people showed up, the majority of them were farm workers. We were blown away by the response, by the stories told, and by what they represent. Ongoing, systematic, and widespread violations of the civil rights of residents and workers in California's farm working communities, both through actively discriminatory policies that cause disproportionate harm, but more pervasively through failure to investigate, to protect, and to enforce existing state laws and regulations. Today we're releasing the advisory opinion of the panel of judges from the People's Tribunal event, and I will pass the mic to our friend and colleague, Dr. Greg Macy with the University of California, Irvine School of Law, to talk more about those findings. We ask that you read and share this report, and that you join us in calling on our state to begin an immediate investigation of our findings. Thank you.